Positive results up to this point.
Mahomes has all day. Kelsey leaks out. He's got a ton of room in front of him. Chambers still brings him down to save the touchdown. Mahomes out to his right. Back across for the touchdown to Hunt.
Let me begin by saying, and I know this may not make all of you happy, but I don't really care. I know they lost by 3 touchdowns last night, but I'm somewhat encouraged. Good morning, everybody. 28-7 was the final score. I stayed up, Max, and watched the entire baseball game last night.
I'm proud.
I'm going to tell you right now, it was one of the more riveting sports events I've ever watched. I couldn't turn it off. I was wide awake. It was impossible to fall asleep given the edge of your seat every pitch as this thing went 6 hours and 39 minutes, 6-5 in 18 innings. Shohei Ohtani was 4 for 4, but he was 9 for 9 in terms of reaching base. He walked 5 times, many of those intentional walks. So, by the way, 2 home runs as part of the 4 for 4 night. The moment that Clayton Kershaw came into the game in extra innings to get 1 key out with the bases loaded and 2 outs was one of the most nerve-wracking moments for sports fans, baseball fans of all time, because he got lit up in the postseason in his last postseason appearance. Everybody remembers what happened to him in relief when he pitched against the Nats in 2019, which was his previous appearance before this postseason as a reliever in the playoffs. All right, that's it. I'm just telling you, if you stayed up and watched it last night, you know what I'm talking about. That is as good as sports gets. The Dodgers in 18 innings, 6-5 in a game that will go down as an all-time World Series classic. All right, back to our game. Yeah, I'm somewhat encouraged. I know they lost 28-7, but look, the Chiefs are obviously the better team. We knew that before the game. We obviously know that after the game. Every team in the NFL, I get it, has a chance, even when you don't think there's a chance. But Kansas City came into last night as a double-digit favorite for all of the right reasons. They are really good. They came in playing their best football of the season so far. They came in the healthiest they've been in a while. Now, they did have 2 offensive linemen missing, but in terms of their skill position players, they were at home, where Arrowhead is almost impossible to come in and win in. And our team wasn't playing well, isn't very good in terms of the team that they put out there last night with all the missing pieces, including the most important missing piece, their starting quarterback. The Chiefs were supposed to win the game, and they did. But I don't hate the way it happened from our team's standpoint. Last night left me feeling that this thing's far from over. This season still has a lot left to it. I hope that's true because, for God's sake, it's only October. It's not even November yet. I mean, we're used to, over the last 25 years, entering, November, and certainly as you approach Thanksgiving, understanding that there's not going to be much meaningful football in December this year. But we had it last year, and I don't want it to end before Thanksgiving this year. It could, though. It could with what they have coming up. But I don't think it's going to. The next 4 games, all right, the games that start in November, that will be played in the month of November, are the critical games. This is the stretch. This is the moment upcoming that will determine whether or not they are playing for stakes in December or they're just playing out the string in December. They have Seattle on Sunday night at home. They've then come back a week later at home against Detroit. Okay, the Seahawks are 5-2. The Lions are 5-2, right? The Lions are 5-2. And then they go to Madrid to face the Dolphins. Then they have a bye week, and then they come home to face a team in Denver who is 6-2 right now. The next 4 games, they have to get 3 of them. I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's out of the question. They have to get 3 of them, and they've got to enter the month of December with a 500 record to really feel like they legitimately have meaningful games in December. Anything less than 6-6 may not mathematically eliminate them and probably won't. But for all intents and purposes, it will be too much of an uphill battle. 3 of their next 4 is what they need. And by the way, they're only getting it if 5 returns, if Jaden Daniels returns. So, in watching that game last night, and it's actually one of those games that typically I hate going back and even looking at any part of the game, a day afterwards or 2 days afterwards, because it wasn't close. It was a 3-touchdown loss. But I'm actually interested to see a lot of what they did defensively in the first half again, because there was some stuff going on there. For people that wanted change, there was some change last night. But I'll start with this, because I think last night's game, 2 things are simultaneously true. Number one is our team came to play, man. They were ready. They played well in the first half. Now, football games are 60 minutes, not 30. We all understand that. But they played well enough in that first half to have gone to the break with a lead. They didn't. It was 7-7 at halftime, but they were the better team. Washington was the better team in the first 30 minutes. Yes, I get it. It's a 60-minute game. Let me do my thing here. They were the better team in the first half. Patrick Mahomes all but admitted it. He said, we didn't match their energy. We didn't match their competitiveness in the first half. They didn't. Washington was the urgent, desperate, competitive, faster, just more urgent football team in the first half. The problem, of course, is you've got to turn good football, which they played in the first half for the most part, into more than 7 points. And they didn't do that. And they didn't do that for, a couple of reasons. Really 3 plays, 2 fourth downs, and a dropped, bubble screen that ended up getting picked off. Now, first thing that is true, Washington played well in the first half. They came ready to play. Nobody in their right mind that watched that game last night can say Quinn didn't have them ready. All right. They just weren't. They came out flat. I love when, almost 6 out of 10 people, when their team loses, they came out flat. That's not what happened last night. The second thing that's also true is that the Chiefs are just better. They're just better. And he is better. Patrick Mahomes took the game over after halftime. It was one play after another, one off-schedule extension in the pocket, outside the pocket play after another. If you're one of those people that isn't convinced that Patrick Mahomes is one of the greatest of all time, put on the second half tape. 17 of 19 for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half. Those 17 completions, 75% of them were off schedule, were improvised, him creating. 210 yards, the majority of those all off of what he did to extend the play, to allow receivers more time to find space, to get open. The 3 touchdowns, most of those off schedule, looking the hunt, the 4th and goal to make it 14-7. Nobody in the history of the game Nobody in the history of the game is better on that second part of a play. There may be some that have been just as good, okay? But nobody's been better in the history of the game than Mahomes when you've got to go off schedule. When the first read isn't there, the second read isn't there, there's pressure, and then he goes into Mahomes mode. Creates more time. Sometimes it's in the pocket. Sometimes it's outside of the pocket. It is so instinctual. He's got the best field vision of any quarterback I think I've ever watched. Elway had it. Elway's always been in Young. They've always been the comps for me for Mahomes, not Marino. All right. It's just some of the greatest athletic feel you'll ever see on a football field. Very few, if any, have ever had it at the level that he has it. And it was on display. They got the best of Patrick Mahomes for 30 minutes. And when you get the best of Patrick Mahomes for 30 minutes, it doesn't need to be 60. Hard to beat the Chiefs. 28-7 was the final score. The win goes to the Chiefs team. The margin of victory goes to Mahomes. The reason Kansas City won by 3 touchdowns is because of Patrick Mahomes more than anything else. The overall team is better. They deserve to win the game, and other players on their team did some good things. But without Mahomes, there's no way that that's the margin of victory. In fact, they probably don't win the game without Mahomes. I'm not super upset about last night. I feel like there were many takeaways from the game that were encouraging to kind of take this team into this next stretch. Now, of course, availability of key players is going to be the most important thing. If we learn today or tomorrow that, Jaden is not going to play, and I guess Schefter intimated at some point yesterday that there was a chance that the hamstring could keep him out of the Seattle game. If that's true, yeah, I'm not very encouraged about the immediate future and the ability to win 3 or 4 to get back into the hunt. I'm not. It has nothing to do with Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota is a nice player. Okay, he is what we think he is. He's an A-level backup quarterback, and if you need him to start games, he can perform professionally. But this team has no real chance to get back into this thing without Jaden Daniels playing. And last night, man, a lot of cutaways of him smiling and laughing. He seemed very giddy and excited. I mean, I'm hoping that is an indication that he could have played last night, but they were playing it safe, short week leading into Seattle, and he'll be back on Sunday. And then look, there are other players, right, that have to play too, because we saw last night for one of the first times this year that they are different with both Terry and Debo on the field at the same time. It's just different. You don't have a quality starting wide receiver at the NFL level without at least one of them out there. Having them both out there, you can see the difference it makes for the other pass catchers, for the quarterback. But I'm not discouraged. I'm not in the mode of, I was expecting them to lose. I wasn't expecting them to beat the Chiefs. It did not feel last night like last Sunday against Dallas. It didn't feel that way, especially on defense, which I will get to when I get to my game take. Not all losses are the same. They're not. I know they count the same in the standings. All right. But last night was a test for Dan Quinn and Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. and that staff and that locker room and those leaders, the older players that we've been complaining about, to see how they would respond to a 2-game losing skid in an environment that's as good as any in the NFL and up against a team that basically wouldn't lose to really anybody last night. They beat they beat Detroit 2 weeks ago by 13 at home. That game wasn't necessarily a score that indicated the closeness of the game. And they came out last night and they flew around. They played with greater urgency and desperation. They hit hard. They tackled well, especially in the first half. I'm aware of what the final score was. I know I can feel when I go down this path sometimes over the years after a loss. I know that there are people out there going, "You've got to be kidding me." Did you stay up and watch the whole thing, Sheehan? I did. But Kansas City's better, okay? They're a lot better than the Washington team that was out there last night without Jaden Daniels. And Mahomes is just too good when he's playing at that level for a team that has had major, major problems and issues on defense. No matter that they played maybe their best half of football against a quality opponent of the season. Now, let me just mention this. It's not like I came away last night thinking, "Oh, okay, the defense, maybe it's not as bad as we think. Maybe they can play, a little bit differently, more players playing more snaps, lining up in some crazy alignments." At one point, I think they were in like a 2-5-4. I don't even know what they were doing. I can't wait to go back and watch it. I mean, I think they were in that 3-5 that colleges play sometimes. I don't even know what it was. It was so players are up in 2-point stances, roaming around the line of scrimmage. You got at one point just one player with his hand in the dirt on defense. They tried new things. They did. But it's not like I came away from last night thinking, "Oh, okay, well, they're not going to be as bad on defense as we thought." No, they're pretty awful on defense. I watched the second half. I know what happened to them in the second half. But I'll tell you, in that first half, man, they're a team, and they were last year even in that 3-game losing skid. And, they're a team that does have kind of this, and I think it's got to be a reflection of the coach more than anything else. I really do. But when you have guys that are super try-hard guys, they are super try-hard. They have major limitations, especially on defense. We understand that. But when you have that, it's hard not to respect that, even if you can also simultaneously call out their deficiencies. Last night, watching Jeremy Reeves, watching Kinlaw, watching Lattimore bounce back and have that pick, Jacob Martin, who's clearly now, and Suter said this on Wednesday in his film breakdown. He said to me 2 weeks ago, he said, "I'm not sure anybody tries harder than 55. What's his name? And I said, Jacob Martin. Yeah, Martin has a ridiculous motor. And by the way, you heard Troy Aikman talking about that last night. Obviously, the coaches told him that Martin is he just never stops. He had 2 sacks. He had 4 pressures last night. He had a game, certainly as a pass rusher. Kinlaw is impossible at times to block. Quan Martin, they were hitting. I mean, they smacked Mahomes multiple times in this game. They had 2 takeaways. I know one of them wasn't necessarily a takeaway, but it counts as a takeaway. You still have to catch it, which Bobby Wagner did off of Kelsey's hands. Lattimore had a great interception, and then they almost had a third takeaway with the game still in the balance at 14-7 if Lattimore doesn't try to pick up Rashee Rice's fumble in the second half and instead falls on it. They got more than anything. Look, Sunday against the Cowboys, embarrassing. Okay, embarrassing. They've had embarrassing, embarrassing execution multiple times this year, including against the Bears. But in the second half last night, it was much more about them getting Patrick Mahomes'd. They got Mahomes'd last night in the second half more than anything else. They actually had chances to make plays on defense in the second half, but he's just too good. Too good. I'm not saying that they were clean, that they were flawless. That'll never happen with the players they put out there. That won't. The offense, by the way, look, it's just not the same without Jaden Daniels, period. I liked the plan. I liked Mariota involved in every aspect of the run game in the first half. Zone reads, designed runs. They had that 3rd and 3 quarterback counter, which I hate when Jaden runs it. I actually like when Mariota runs it. He just looks sturdier and less breakable. They had an RPO or two. I'll tell you what really worked in presenting Marcus Mariota as a run threat right from the jump, that he was going to be a big part of the run game. And I know final results of the run game were, trust me, I do. But what it really provided them with was very good play action. That zone read where it looks like it's a zone read and then it's truly play action, that is a great pass protecting, presentation. We saw it throughout 2012, right? He threw that drift route to Terry McLaurin in the 3rd quarter when they were backed up after the Jalen Lane botched kickoff return, which was a big play in the game. But that drift where he goes, zone read look, play action, pulls it, and it sucks up the defense. And there's, on that layer behind that linebacker group, there's that big hole, and Terry caught that big pass for, I think it was 17 yards, something like that. The results offensively weren't consistent or good enough over 60 minutes, but I thought that there was a pretty good chance we were going to see Mariota involved, heavily in the run game, and he was. And just so everybody knows, it doesn't mean that he runs on every play when he's involved in the run game. It's that there is the threat of Mariota running on every play. Jaden's the same thing. Last night, though, relying more on Mariota, I thought was going to be a key to the game. Ultimately, they got away from it, and part of that is they went down 2 scores, midway through the 3rd quarter. But I thought the first half, okay, offensively, good balance, good down and distance. They didn't punt. They didn't have a penalty. They had a 4.5-minute time of possession advantage. They moved the ball into Kansas City territory on every single drive, but they didn't turn it into enough on the scoreboard. I get it. Debo, drops a pass, looks upfield before he's got the ball, and instead of it being an incompletion, it turns into an interception. The 2 4th down misses in field goal range, I didn't have a problem with them going for either one. I didn't. The 4th and 6 was 5 inches short, according to the virtual measurement. I actually thought he got the first down when they first showed the replay. And then I don't know what that 4th and 1 was. I didn't have a problem for them going for it. I don't know what that play was. That was probably the ugliest looking play of the first half. I thought the approach, for the most part, was right. They moved the football consistently. They did. They just couldn't turn it into points. And maybe if Jaden Daniels is out there last night, it ends up being more points. Who knows? Offensively, you knew that they weren't going to be what they usually are, but I thought they were impressive other than on the scoreboard. Look, I just think that last night was an indication that they are long away from any sort of discussion about, they're mailing it in. Quinn's lost the team. Peters is whatever. That's not what you saw last night. You saw a culture that came through in that incredible effort that they gave. They're just not anywhere near as good as the Chiefs are. You can stare at the final score. You can stare at the box score all you want. You can roll your eyes all you want. But if you don't think that team last night came out to play that game, I just disagree with you. The Chiefs and Mahomes are just a lot better. And I think, what they did last night can carry over. I do. Into a game like Sunday against Seattle. Now, it's short week versus a bye week team, one of these net rest disadvantages that almost seem unfair. But what they have to do more than anything is they've got to have their best players that can play on the field Sunday. Jaden's got to be back. Terry can't, he didn't play much of the 4th quarter. We don't know if the quad, was getting worked on. We don't know what his status is. Kinlaw, Tunsil, they've not only have they gotten injured in recent weeks, they've lost their best players. Dorrance Armstrong, Jaden didn't play. But I think the way they played last night can carry over. And Sunday against the Seahawks does feel very much like the season is on the line. They'll have to, come out and bring it the way they did last night and hope that the results are different on the scoreboard. The good news is Sam Darnold and the Seahawks are playing very well. They are. But Sam Darnold isn't Patrick Mahomes. He's not that. That is for sure. All right, I will get to my game take, what I liked, didn't like, and a few other observations about last night's 28-7 loss. Yes, they did lose the game when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show. We're on the Team 980. We're on the team980.com. You can also stream us, watch us on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Just please, when you get there, just take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button.
Jaden Daniels, they play Sunday night against the Seattle Seahawks. And I just think a guy that's had a knee injury and a hamstring injury and some injury issues, hamstrings, you got to be really careful with them. Look how careful Lamar's been. I won't be surprised if we don't see Jaden again on Sunday night.
The hamstring is like once it happens, right? Doesn't that kind of become like a thing people get scared about?
You got to give it time to heal, and it's, obviously players and coaches aren't trying to do that in the middle of the season. But in a situation like the Ravens, like you want your star quarterback back. That was kind of the conversation outside of that building too, where the Ravens trying to almost force Lamar to get in there. So interesting.
That's why they put full participation. To kind of put a little public pressure on.
We heard the Schefter part.
Yeah, there's conspiracies for everything.
You can bail on that. We heard the Schefter part. Schefter doesn't throw stuff like that just out there. I guess sometimes maybe he does, but I'm wondering if he's hearing something. I'll tell you this. If Jaden doesn't play Sunday night against the Seahawks, of course they have a chance, and they've got a better chance than they had last night. But they need him back. If they're going to get back into this thing, they have to have him at quarterback. All right, let's get to my game take.
Kevin's take. The good, the bad, the ugly from yesterday's Washington football team game. Here's Kevin.
All right, it's actually the good, the bad, and the other that was not good or bad. I'll start with the good. I'll be repetitive here, but it was the way that they arrived and the way they played, especially in the first half, the energy. Credit to Dan Quinn, the coaching staff, the players. This team was ready. Nobody in their right mind could watch that game last night and say, oh, they didn't come to play. They came out flat. That's not what happened. Okay, they played a better football team in their park, which is one of the most intimidating places in the league. I mean, it happens to the better teams in the league that go in there, like Detroit. I loved the way as Quinn told Laura Rutledge at the end of the first quarter in that sideline interview when he said, we're living on the edge. They came out. They were bold. They were living on the edge. They went for it. I appreciate that. I do. If you don't, whatever. Not many teams, not many really good teams that are healthy, like Detroit was a few weeks ago, beat the Chiefs with the way they played in the second half. Number 2 on the list of good, the first half defense specifically, different than the second half defense. All right. But the first half defense, that was as good as it's been recently on defense against the Chiefs. Not everything worked. Okay. Of course, there were some bad plays. The 27-yard throw from Mahomes to Worthy looked like another coverage, mishap, and maybe it was Amos. There were a couple of short third down conversions that were just too easy. But overall, they got pressure on Mahomes. They sacked him. They had 2 picks. One, a legitimate pick by Lattimore. That was a really good defensive play. The Kelsey, ricochet has to be caught, and Wagner caught it. Jacob Martin was a pass rush, monster at times last year. Maybe that's hyperbole, but he is probably their highest motor pass rusher with Armstrong out. He forced, on a pressure, a bad throw and an incompletion. How about Jeremy Reeves? Holy crap. I mean, no player was it reflected more in last night than the attitude that they came to Arrowhead with. Reeves does it all the time. I get it. Reeves is a try-hard, and he'll hit you. He was all over the field. He stopped Mahomes on that 3rd and 10. They ended up getting the 4th down, but he laid the wood to Mahomes on the sideline. He had Kelsey for the loss on the flat pass. I think it was Rice on another play. Reeves was really a tone setter last night. Loved it. Kinlaw, before he left the game, was a beast at times. Again, far from perfect, but we're talking about our team's defense, which has been horrific in recent weeks against good teams. And I thought that was against a good team, the best half they've played this year. I mean, at the end of the day, Mahomes and the Chiefs had 7 points of offense, and they were lucky that it was tied. Of course, the second half did happen. I'm fully aware of that. I will get to that when I get to the list of things that weren't good from the game last night. The first half offense, I mean, I liked everything other than the 2 fourth downs and the Debo drop that resulted in an interception, a devastating interception. They are rolling on that opening drive. Mariota, I counted on that opening drive, 3 zone reads. He kept one of them, a design quarterback counter on 3rd and 3 for 7 yards, an RPO throw, I think it was, to McCaffrey. You know, they had 194 yards of offense in the first half. They were 5 of 7 on 3rd down. They were 6.1 yards per play. They didn't punt. They didn't come close to punting. No penalties. A 4.5-minute time of possession advantage. They only had 7 points. That's the killer. You know, they could have opted for field goals instead of going for the 2 fourth downs, but they had a backup kicker last night. Matthew Wright called up for Matt Gay, who hurt his back over the weekend. The first 4th down is a 4th and 6 that, you know, Ertz has to go get it. I thought he did. I don't have a problem with that versus a 57 or 58-yard field goal attempt with Matthew Wright or even a punt. I didn't have a problem with that at all. Who knows if Wright can even kick it from that far? I don't know anything about him. The second 4th and 1 was my least favorite play of the night, I think. Overall, I don't know what happened. I don't know why Terry stopped. I don't know why Mariota on 4th and 1 felt compelled to go deep. I don't know why Cliff Kingsbury felt like he needed to do anything other than get the first down. Be bold, but be bold with a wide open receiver if you're going to throw it deep, you know, off of some, you know, level of significant play action. It just that was a hurtful play. They had 3 hurtful plays in the first half, and that's what kept them from scoring. They drove into Kansas City territory, people, 5 of the first 6 drives of the game. And after that, the game was basically over when they got the ball back for the third possession. It's 7-7, third possession of the second half offensively. It's 28-7. But I thought, other than the score output of 7 points, big deal, which I didn't think really matched much of the execution in the first half, I thought it was pretty good. Now, the run game, you know, the intention was there. I don't know if the patience was there, but the Chiefs did load it up, you know, after obviously realizing what they wanted to try to do, and they wanted to then dare Mahomes to beat him with his arm. On the list of good, I got Marcus Mariota on the list. You know, in the first half, 14 of 17 for 155 yards, you know, 24 yards rushing. For the game, he was 21 of 30. That's 70%, 213 yards, 1 touchdown to Terry. That throw is an interesting throw, isn't it? It brought rain. It was so high up into the air, but it came down, and Terry did a phenomenal job. More on him in a moment. Mariota threw 2 picks, but, you know, look, the first one clearly not his fault. I mean, that's a bubble screen, and Debo has it ricochet off him and has it intercepted. That's a killer in the game. And then the second interception, if you weren't watching, came with 12 seconds left in the game. I mean, hardly, you know, a back-breaking play. He was sacked a couple times, but I thought he avoided 2 to 3 sacks with his escapability. His run threat, like I said, this is where you see the teams that have legitimate quarterbacks who can beat you with their legs, and the offensive coordinator implements an offense that makes that quarterback a run threat, even if he's not going to run. There's just massive benefit that comes with that. And you saw it last night more in the play action game than you did anywhere else. But look, I like Mariota. I thought he was, you know, I mean, there were some good plays, like early on, super sharp, you know, as a runner, as a decision maker. The interception, not his fault. Second drive, he's got really good off-schedule throws to McNichols, and then the sideline toe tap by McCaffrey. The 4th and 6 to Ertz is a good throw should come up, beyond the sticks. I thought it did. First half, he's got that read option, play action again to Bates, who's wide open. Flat pass to Sinnott on their fourth drive for 22 yards. Check down, found the check down, found it quickly to McNichols on that incredible lob over the defense where he got flushed and he stepped up and he just pushed it high over the line of scrimmage to McNichols, who took it for 18 yards. The throw to Terry was, an interesting throw, but it worked. It was a touchdown. The throw to Terry down the sideline that Terry pulled in amazingly and stayed in bounds. I thought he was a BB plus in the game. I mean, you need an A plus performance from your quarterback to beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. But Marcus Mariota's on the list of things that I liked. Terry McLaurin's clearly on the list of things that were likable from the game. 2 incredible catches. I mean, he really does a phenomenal job with, tracking and then pulling it in and then keeping feet in bounds. That touchdown was beautiful. I mean, he had 2 catches that were overturned by replay because referees didn't even believe that he could have pulled those catches in and stayed in bounds. The one on the sideline, the big one, was just a phenomenal job to get the hip down before the feet hit out of bounds. And, that drift route that we used to see with RG3 and you see with this offense too, he can create a little bit of room on that play because he's Terry McLaurin. He's not Rob Chosen. Jeremy McNichols is on this list again. This is like the 5th time this year, man. He's having a season. 5 catches, 64 yards. That led Washington in receptions and yardage. He's so good after the catch. He's very difficult to get down. He's great in pass pro. McNichols is a valuable player for this team. There's no doubt. Defensively, again, the players that stood out, I have no idea how they'll grade out over all of their snaps, but Reeves stood out to me. The hitting, the sense of urgency. This is a guy that competes at the highest levels. He just is a badass competitor. We've known that from his special teams play, and he plays the same way defensively. Kinlaw's having a year. I think he's a good player. He's very difficult to block. They lined him up all over the place, including at defensive end. Again, got to go back and watch defensively what they did. They had some crazy alignments. Jacob Martin, 2 sacks, a couple of pressures. Lattimore had, the best play of the season for him. That was excellent coverage. Great job to not only pull it in, but get the feet down because that wasn't a given on the sideline. I mean, you pick Mahomes off on a back shoulder throw to the slot receiver. He played it beautifully. I thought Johnny Newton flashed for me, especially as a pass rusher. Now, he had that sack, in the second half and then got the 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness. It's going to get called. It's going to get called more times than not. Yeah. Wagner was all over the field last night. We knock Wagner a lot. He misses on a lot, and he's terrible in coverage. He's too slow. He doesn't run well. Obviously, a guy like McGee runs much better. But Wagner tackles, man, and Wagner's there. Quan Martin tackles. He hit last night. So, yeah, I think that's it on the list of things that I liked. Oh, McCaffrey, another big kickoff return, the opening kickoff return, 37 yards, then had the sideline catch and got both feet in for 17 yards. And also, lastly, on the list of things that I liked, 2 takeaways. The team was second worst in the league, second fewest in the league in takeaways with 3 through the first 7 games. Only the Jets had fewer, and they added 2 last night. They needed to be +2. They weren't +2. They ended up being even after the last pick with 12 seconds to go. But, yeah, Lattimore, great interception. Wagner's pick, a gift for sure. But you'll take takeaways. Sometimes they come in bunches. And these are the kinds of things that you got to hope for, because defensively, they're not going to be a consistently, average defense. They're going to be sub-average week in and week out. But what can make up for that is a ricochet off of a tight end's, hands into the waiting arms of our middle linebacker, or one good play from one of our corners that takes a possession away and adds one to your offense. That's, if someone told me right now that over the last 9 games, Washington went 6-3 to finish 9-8, okay, or 7-2 to finish 10-7, I will guarantee you, if that happens, they are majorly plus in turnover margin. Majorly. Now, that seems very obvious, okay? It wasn't last year. They just kept overcoming things with their offense and with their quarterback. But I think on this team, you're going to have to get it with the severe limitations that they have, especially on defense. They're going to have to do something to contribute. And sometimes they come in bunches and they're very random. The Chiefs, that fumble by Rice, which he recovered, Lattimore had a chance. I heard Aikman say last night that is their 8th fumble of the season, and they haven't lost one of them. That's living right for sure. All right, the list of things that I didn't like from the game when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and theteam980.com.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and a less than happy night on Monday Night Football for the Washington Commanders. It was a tale of two halves as Washington was able to come away with 2 interceptions in the first half and go into the halftime break tied 7-7. Then Patrick Mahomes remembered who he was and marched down the field for 3 second-half touchdowns. Final score, Chiefs 28, Commanders 7. To the World Series we go. We got a 2-for-1 special last night. 18 innings of postseason baseball, a back-and-forth game between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays that went into the final frame of action, tied at 5 apiece. 9 more innings of baseball were played until the final World Series hero, Freddie Freeman, cranked a deep shot to deep center field, put it away for the Dodgers just before 3 a.m. Eastern time. Tonight, the Caps, they get going against the Dallas Stars. No Rasmus Sandin as he heads to the IR with an upper body injury, nor will we see Dylan Strome as he is day-to-day with an upper body injury he suffered against the Ottawa Senators. They brought up Ethan Frank from Hershey, and we'll expect to see Connor McMichael and Ryan Leonard on the top line with Alex Ovechkin. Puck drops at 8:30. Pregame coverage begins at 8:15 on our sister station 106.7 The Fan. And the Sixers, they take on the Wizards tonight. That'll be at 6:45 right here on the Team 980. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Good protection. The pass is picked off by Lattimore. And boy, did he need that.
Yeah, he did. It was a good play by Marshawn Lattimore. They need one or two of those a week from the secondary to overcome all the other stuff. And maybe 2 takeaways last night was the beginning of something nice. They had 2 takeaways against the Chargers, and they won the football game. Not so much last night. So I am going through my game take, the list of things that I liked. I loved the energy. I loved the effort. It was I appreciated the overall kind of demeanor and disposition that they came out with. It was the kind that, typically will result in at least a close game and a chance. I thought at halftime they had a chance. Obviously, the second half then happened. I thought the first half defense, the first half offense were excellent. I thought Marcus Mariota played well. They needed an A+, an A performance from the quarterback. He was a solid B+, but not enough against the Chiefs. Terry was insanely good last night in his return. 2 incredible catches. They really need the 2 of them on the field for this stretch run. There is no margin for error here. They can't just hope that they roll out a shell of their team and can overcome it somehow for a week or two. There's no margin for error now. They need to win 3 of the next 4, period. McNichols was on my good list. Reeves, Martin, Kinlaw, Lattimore, Luke McCaffrey, a big-time catch on the sideline, another big kickoff return, 2 takeaways. So there you go for the list of things that I like. Now to the bad list. I'll start with just 7 points. They just, for whatever reason, I mean, we know what the reasons were: 2 missed 4th downs and an interception that was unfortunate. They needed to take advantage of a half in which they moved the football. They converted on 3rd downs. They had nearly 200 yards of offense, 5 for 7 on 3rd downs. They didn't punt. They moved the ball into Kansas City territory on 5 of their first 6 drives. By the time they got it back for their 7th drive, it was 28-7, game over. 7 points against that team on the road is nowhere near enough. And the frustration is they had the opportunity for more. But the interception, a killer. The 4th and 6, 5 inches short, I think, at least according to the virtual measurement. And then the 4th and 1, I don't know what that was. I would have preferred a play that got 2 to 3 to 4 yards instead of taking a shot down the sideline, man coverage. Let's face it, Terry's a phenomenal contested catch guy. He's not necessarily your best separation guy in the league. That just seemed silly. They'll probably have an explanation for it when maybe Kingsbury on Thursday. I don't know. But number 1 on the list of things that were not good from this game, 7 points. Next up, second half defense. They just couldn't get off the field after maybe the best half of football they've played all year against a quality opponent. They couldn't get off the field in the second half. I think really in recent weeks, it's been much more about our defense and less about the opponent. I do think that last night was more about how good the Chiefs and Mahomes are versus we're terrible on defense. It's true that our team is terrible on defense, but I thought last night, this one entity, this one game, I thought it was much more about Mahomes being elite in the second half. The first possession was a really good example of it being more, I think, about, the Chiefs or more about circumstance or even bad fortune. Bobby Wagner gets a tipped ball and it ends up being a play in which Quan Martin hits a defenseless Noah Gray, and it's 15 yards, first down instead of 3rd and long. That's just kind of a tough break. I think the call was fine. A tip ball, by the way, no, it does not wave off defenseless hits. It waves off pass interference on a tip ball, but not a defenseless hit. That was an unfortunate play. 2 plays later, good coverage all over the field until somebody forgets about the check down. And the check down's Kelsey. I think you got to know, even if Kelsey's in blocking to start a play, that he's probably not going to do that for that long. And Mahomes, with his field vision, comes all the way across, and there's Kelsey, and he runs for 38 yards. But they did a good job everywhere else. It wasn't like last week or even the Bears game where they're running through them like a sieve, or Dallas, it's easy pitch and catch. They got tough on that drive. First drive of the third quarter, 7-7 game. It's 4th and goal at the 2. They force a 4th down and goal from the 2.5. Really, it should have been the 1. They got a bad spot, the Chiefs did, on the Rice play on 2nd down. But Mahomes does, a Mahomes thing. He extends, he flushes right, and then he finds Kareem Hunt in the end zone, touchdown. You could say that Wagner got picked off by Kelsey, and there should have been a switch. There should have been a pass of Hunt. But on those extended plays, man, with Mahomes, I mean, the Buffaloes and the Baltimores of the world over the last several years, it happens to them. He's ridiculous. He's otherworldly. Bottom line, though, Kansas City scored touchdowns on their first 3 drives of the second half. And those 3 drives added up to 29 offensive plays for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mahomes, Rice was good, Kelsey was good. Not only that, on those first 3 drives of the second half, they only had 2 third downs on 29 plays. So I thought the effort was there. I thought eventually they got worn down by what is, week in and week out, just back-breaking brilliance by Patrick Mahomes. The second half run defense was abysmal. They are now struggling to stop the run. The Chiefs rushed for 90 yards in the second half, 5.6 yards per carry. For the game, they were 30 for 148, 4.9 yards per. You've got to be better against the run. They weren't a good run-stopping team last year, and as it turns out, we're 8 games into this season. They're really not that good of a run-stopping team this year either. Not as bad, but in moments as bad. They gave up more explosives, 6 plays of 15 yards or more, 4 of 24 or more. But again, I think that is, the majority of those Mahomes' second part of the play. Creating time, you just can't cover for that long. And without a consistent pass rush, which they don't have, Mahomes is going to end up, shredding you, even if you're good for the first part of the play. The Jalen Lane botched kickoff return at 14-7 was really a hurtful play, man. You gotta answer at that point. You scored on your final possession of the first half, and they scored to open up the third quarter. It's a 14-7 game. You're in the game, and Jalen Lane fields the kick, and it goes out of bounds at the 1.5-yard line. They got out of trouble because they were good for much of the night on offense. Not great, not consistent, but they got out to the 27, 28-yard line from the 1. But that's just a play. When you start at your own 1.5-yard line, very rarely are you going to end up with a 98.5-yard drive for a touchdown. And then lastly, on the things that I did not like, the end of the first half, and I'll explain what I mean when we come back, and then I'll give you a couple of other observations. And we will now open up phone lines at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, for you to vent on this third straight post-game loss discussion. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980.
how's the pride? Because you didn't go back in after the one play.
Yeah.
Is it an issue again?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just trying to take it day by day. Is just monitoring hits, a little sore and everything. So, anytime I could just be out here fighting for the team, I'm always gonna put myself out there. So, just see how the week goes and go from there.
Did you tweak it on
I don't know yet, really. So I'm just gonna continue to take it day by day and just see how it feels in the morning. It's hard to say is what it is or what it isn't. You know what I mean? So. I feel pretty good, but we'll just see how the week progresses.
Terry McLaurin, really, really good comeback game last night. Just 3 catches for 54 yards, but my God, 2 of those catches, incredible. During the break, I was looking at that 4th and 1 with 10 and a half minutes to go, first half at the Kansas City 28-yard line. It's a zero coverage, all-out blitz. Washington's got 4. They're man across the board, and Ertz wins big, and Mariota's got to hit him. And I don't know what he's looking at. Honestly, Terry doesn't win, not even close. He throws it, towards the pylon, basically. He ends up at the 5. Terry's running, an out and up and doesn't give me even a chance. Terrible, execution. That's the worst play of the night offensively. The Debo play maybe is hurtful, but this is, 4th and 1, and it's 1. It's not like, 4th and 1.5 or closer to 4th and 2. And they get zero coverage blitz, and they get man, and Ertz wins immediately. And I think he's got to throw it. It's got to be out immediately to Ertz. No one else wins. Debo doesn't win. McCaffrey, I don't think is going to win. And there's no time for McCaffrey and McLaurin anyway, because he's got to unload it because of the pressure. You got to have somebody hot there. And I think, Ertz is the one that won. That's the play you got to look at offensively and say, what happened? What are we doing here? Was it the quarterback that didn't pick up that this was zero coverage blitz? Would that have checked to something, a little shorter, a little quicker? You got 2 of your 4 receivers running deep routes on 4th and 1, and Ertz and Debo, Debo's clearly more of a decoy, maybe on an out and up double move for Terry. But it had no chance. All right. Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. 0980. I've given you, all of the things that I thought were good from the game, the things that were bad. My overall theme to this day after is I'm not that upset. I thought that they really brought it last night, and they just got beat by, a much better team and an otherworldly quarterback who was insanely great in the second half. That was vintage Mahomes in the second half, 17 of 19, and just, making the plays himself with buying extra time through his vision and through his feet and through his ability to escape and extend. It's brilliant to watch. It sucks when it's, your team playing against it, or, the team you bet on. That's painful as well. But yeah, last thing on the list that of things that I did not like from the game. I didn't like the end of the first half. Now, there are some explanations to defend Quinn, but if you recall, there's an intentional grounding. Part of the pressure that they got on Mahomes the whole first half, they made it uncomfortable for him. And he, has to take the ball in his left hand and try to get it back to the line of scrimmage, and he doesn't. It's intentional grounding. There's, when the play ends, there are 6 seconds left on the clock. And on an intentional grounding, unless either team chooses to call a timeout, there's a 10-second runoff. And I just thought on that particular play, I want to use one of the 3 timeouts that I have. I haven't wasted them because of delay of games or almost delay of games. I haven't wasted them on defense. I've got all 3 timeouts left. Mahomes is pressured by Louvu, and he unloads it, and they call it grounding back at the 29-yard line. It's a 10, 11-yard loss. And, they let the clock do the 10-second runoff. Now, there are a couple of ways to look at this. I start with this. He said we're living on the edge tonight to Laura Rutledge. We're coming in bold. We're coming in, swinging. We're going to be going for fourth downs. We're not coming in here trying to tippy-toe our way conservatively to kind of hang in there. We're going for it. Okay, well, with 6 seconds to go in the half after the Mahomes play, let's use a timeout, avoid the 10-second runoff, and make them punt. And by the way, go for the block all out, because even if you rough the punter, they're not going to be in field goal range with the 15 yards. Give Jalen Lane a shot because he's got a 90-yarder on the season. Now, the defense to what he didn't do, calling a timeout, would be, well, all you're going to do is they're going to snap it to Mahomes. He's going to run around and he's going to launch one down, the field out of bounds, and the half is going to be over. Or even worse, he's going to launch one down the middle of the field. The clock will run out, and we're going to end up interfering, Kelsey on a jump ball or something. Okay. That's not an unreasonable take. But 6 seconds isn't 3 seconds. They were getting pressure. If they try to run an offensive play from their own 29-yard line with 6 seconds to go to run the clock out, it's probably going to be successful, but there's a chance it won't be. So take the time out. The odds are in your favor if anything dramatic happening in your favor, not theirs. So I didn't love that, but I would understand the counter, which would be, yeah, they're going to run him around, and then he's going to launch one because he can throw it 70 yards in the air, and somebody's going to interfere with Rice, or the ball's going to get tipped, and Worthy's going to end up with it, and it's going to be a touchdown. Okay. I would have loved to have seen them trot the punt team out there for sure. I thought for sure, by the way, when Kansas City took over after our touchdown, that they would get into field goal range, and they seem to be heading in that direction. They gained 33 yards on the first or 30 yards on the first two plays. And they're out there at the 40-yard line, and they got a legit shot. But give the defense credit. Ken Law had, a pressure. Amos had a PBU, I think, in that moment against Worthy. And then Luvu got that pressure that forced the intentional grounding. It was part of what was a pretty good half. In fact, again, I'll say it again, the best half defensively against a quality opponent all season long. All right, the other observation list. So at the end of the first half, before that opportunity for Quinn to use a timeout and force them to punt or run another play, there was an odd circumstance. So before Washington scores, two things happened that I thought that I haven't talked about. One was there's a 2nd and 10 at the 2-minute warning, and it goes to McNichols down to the Kansas City 10-yard line, and they mark it short of the line to gain. So it's going to be 3rd and 1, or 3rd and less than 1. And the clock's rolling, and I was surprised Andy Reid didn't hit a timeout right away. He had 2 left, and I thought, call the timeout, minute 54 left, and if they make it, fine. If they miss it, you got a shot to get the ball back, or they might kick a field goal. We'll see what happens. But he didn't call the timeout, and Washington's doing what they didn't do for much of the game, which is they're letting the clock run. If they're gonna get this 3rd and 1 and they're gonna score here, they're gonna do it on their own terms. They're gonna take as much time. They're not gonna leave Kansas City with much time. But what happened is under 2 minutes you get the review by the booth, and they call down and say stop the clock. It stops at a minute 26 left, 14 seconds left on the play clock. And they change the spot, and they give Washington and McNichols on the catch and run a 1st down at the Kansas City 10-yard line, 11-yard line. And then they say, please adjust the clock to a minute 54 seconds, and Kansas City has chosen to use a timeout. Now, maybe Andy Reid didn't call the timeout because it's 3rd and 1 and he figures Washington's going to get it. Washington's not going to run out of time. That's one of those situations. You're down at the 10-yard line. You got 3 timeouts left. You're not going to run out of time. As a defensive, team, you're thinking, how do I preserve time for my offense. I don't think that there's a massive difference between him calling a timeout on 3rd and 1 or him calling a timeout on 1st and 10, but they gave him the opportunity to think about it. They adjusted the clock and he called a timeout. So the Chiefs ended up having a lot more time on the clock on their final drive of the first half because of, the bad spot and then the review. And then on the play before the touchdown to Terry McLaurin, did anybody else think that was a catch by Debo down at the 1 yard line? I thought it was certainly worth halting the game to review. It seemed like, and maybe they did it and they had a view that said, no, it wasn't. I thought it was pretty damn close to a catch. What else do I have on this list? I think I already mentioned, before Kansas City's touchdown on 4th and goal to open up the third quarter to take a 14-7 lead, they got a terrible spot on Rashee Rice's catch where he extends it towards the pylon. It gets to about the 1, maybe even inside the 1, but they ruled that he was out of bounds. They marked it close to the 3 yard line, and the Chiefs ended up with a 4th and goal from almost the 3. It was like the 2.5 that they did convert for a touchdown. I've already mentioned Lattimore, not landing on the ball. I don't know whose fault it was on the Mariota sack on Washington's second possession of the second half. This is the Terry catch down the sideline that gets overturned. We were at their 38 yard line on 3rd and 11. And this is a big play, right? Because you've got to, in that moment, it's 21-7. You've got to score. And you need, a couple of yards. You need 5 or 6 yards so you have a 4th down opportunity that you can go for. You could also consider kicking a field goal. I don't know if that would have been the best call at that point, down 21-7. And there's an immediate sack on Mariota. And they initially said it was Connerly, but I think you saw Cosme over there on the sideline. By the way, Cosme, first rate, upstanding the whole thing. Somebody should just ask him. He'll say, my fault, if it was. But there was a miscommunication there. They left Dana wide open on a blitz that cost Washington 9 yards and forced a punt on 4th and 21, 4th and 20. That was not good. I mentioned Newton's 15-yard penalty after sack. I thought Newton actually played pretty well. That's, whatever. It's the end of the game. They're down 28-7 at that point. All right, 301-230-0980. Real quickly, Max, your big takeaways were?
Oh, man. The big takeaway was, like you said at the beginning, it's looking better. The guys came to play. I texted you that last night. And the second half, it was just here and I don't know and understand why we switched to a zone defense against Mahomes, especially when we weren't getting a ton of pressure, but he was just dancing around the pocket, making plays. Going forward, you need Jaden Daniels back or else it's cooked. The season is over. But so you got to look at his status right now and then kind of make that decision right now if you want to be buyers or sellers at the deadline. And I think it's time to retool and look forward and look long-term, because I think that right now in this iteration of this team and this defense, it's not really going anywhere.
Yeah, there was more zone defense last night than man, but they can't cover man. They can't do it, especially against some of the speed that the Chiefs have. And I think that is more about, trying to keep everything in front of you. Now, they ended up with some catches near the line of scrimmage, like the Kelsey play that goes for 38 yards. Look, the second half defensively looked more like it's looked in recent weeks, but it, again, not exactly. They had opportunities, whereas last week they didn't have many of them at all. All right, your calls next when we come back. So Joe, Anthony, Reggie, Jody, Steve, Dre, Tony, Cam, everybody on hold, stay there. Your reaction, 28-7, the final, 3-5, Seattle coming to town for Sunday Night Football. Feels very much like a must-win for me. I'm saying 3 of the next 4, you got to get to 6-6. So if they lost, theoretically, they could win the next 3. But do you really want to have Detroit coming in? That would then be a must game to avoid 3-7. You got to get to December at 6-6. 5-7 will be sitting here, not out of it mathematically. And you're looking at, Minnesota, in that first game in December. They're obviously in tatters right now. The Giants on the road. But then it's Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles to finish up. You got to get to 6-6 where you've got a legit shot and a little bit of room to drop a game or two and yet still have a chance, and probably just drop one. Because I think you got to get to 10 to have any legitimate chance this year. All right, your call's next.
But Kansas City continuing to hit their stride.
No doubt. As Rice makes the catch for the touchdown.
28-7, the final. The theme here this morning from me is, but they actually didn't play that badly. and there were some encouraging takeaways. But look, all of that doesn't matter if Jaden Daniels doesn't come back and isn't healthy and doesn't play at or near the level he played at last year. That's what you have up your sleeve. Rarely have we had over the years anything up our sleeve at 3-5. You have that. And you've got a team, like I said and have said for the last hour and 25 minutes, you've got a team that really does play hard. They are a try-hard team. There's no doubt about it. They're limited. They are limited for sure. But last night's effort was respectable in my opinion. And unfortunately, they couldn't make decent football in the first half, and that effort pay off on the scoreboard in the first half. Because if they could have, with a couple of better plays on fourth downs or the Debo not turning that, opening drive into a turnover, they would have had more points perhaps on the board. All right. Your chance, 301-230-0980. Let's start with Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
Kevin, I'm still pissed off. I wasn't expecting them to win, but if you were ever going to steal a game, this was it.
Why do you say that? If you were ever going to steal one, you mean based on how they played in the first half?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Yeah, because I didn't feel like it was stealable going into it.
Oh, I didn't either, but the way they came out.
Yeah, I agreed. Right.
You could legitimately say that at halftime they should have been up 14-0, possibly even 21-0. I continue to say this, and it just irks the hell out of me. Both sides of the ball, they are coaching the game not to lose instead of to win.
You thought that last night?
Yes. I didn't see one blitz on Mahomes. And you talked about a couple of plays where he got rushed. But other than that, even when he had the scramble, he never was rushed to throw the ball. He could just pick who he wanted to throw it to and throw the ball when he wanted to. He never had to worry about throwing it when he didn't want to. I don't understand why.
Well, there were a couple of times. I mean, Martin had a rush in the first half where he unloaded it quickly, incomplete, 5 yards short of the target. He had the intentional grounding at the end of the first half. He was sacked 3 times in the game. They had, 9 QB hits in the game. I don't know what the blitz pressure was last night. That's something I was not paying attention to. I don't think that I think they did come with extra man pressure more than 0 times. I've got to go back and look at that. But
I don't recall seeing one time on the offensive side. Third and 5, whatever the case. Why the hell are you running horizontal patterns? Why aren't you throwing the ball past the sticks?
Which play are you talking about?
The one that Ertz behind the stick.
Oh, on the 4th and 6.
Yes. Also, there was the Debo pass. If he catches it, I don't know if he gets the first down or not. But there was a pass to the tight end going to the side where they needed like 3 or 4 yards. Just throw the ball past the sticks to not leave it in question. And let me ask you this: when was the last time you saw our running back run the ball 3 times in a row?
Well, there was probably an opportunity because there were several zone reads where, obviously the quarterback kept it, at least on 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, they're not lining up Krosky Merritt with heavy jumbo and running right at a team. And by the way, he hasn't been very impressive, let's be honest, over the last few games. Now, you could say, well, he hasn't had enough opportunities, but I think he had 12 carries last week and was under 3 yards a carry. He was under 3 yards a carry again last night. It's not all on him. Let me just say this about the 4th and 6, Anthony. you get a lot of teams on 4th down and 6 that will throw, they'll clear it out and they'll throw underneath, knowing that they've got a really good opportunity to get it with yards after catch. And that 4th and 6 was thrown close enough to the sticks, wasn't it? I'm going to go back and look at it again, but it wasn't like, it wasn't anywhere near the sticks. Thanks for your call, as always. Let's go to Reggie in D.C. Reggie, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Love the show as always.
Thanks, Reggie.
This is arguably one of the most frustrating games because when it was 7-7 at halftime, Kevin, I felt deflated because I'm like, I think if I'm not mistaken, Troy Aikman mentioned it. We had the ball in their territory, I think 4 out of the 5 times, or
5 out of 6 drives to first 6, yeah. And in the first half, right? Yeah, first half all 4 drives 4 times in their territory.
Yeah, and it was so frustrating that we left points on the field. I just would have loved to seen the game if it was 17-7. And then even in the second half, I'm still like, okay, I like what I'm seeing. And then Quan Martin gets if I'm not mistaken, I think that penalty extended the drive.
Yeah.
Where he got the unnecessary roughness. I'm like, oh my God. And then, okay, Lattimore, I get it. You played a good game. Lattimore, fall on the ball. Don't try to pick it up. Because he could have fell on it, maybe used his body to shield Rasheed Rice. But again, I think overall, Kevin, you cannot leave that Dallas game and then fast forward to Kansas City game and at least the effort and not feel like if we can get the same effort. And I would like to see, because I think one of the things they mentioned with Kay Madrano was his ability to rush. Like, I think he did both. So we can get another.
Did he play last night on defense? I was looking for him. Did he play at all on defense last night, Max?
No.
Yeah.
No, he didn't play. No, he didn't play. But I like McGee. I like Owens. Reeves.
I like Owens. Yeah, I like Owens. Yes. 18.
Yes.
They had him out there. They tried some new things.
Yeah. But Kevin, I think about it, like a lot of times, and there was one play that got to get me frustrated where Lubu was in a spy. For no reason, he took his eyes off Mahomes and let him get out the back door. And I'm like, well, okay, why are you drifting a little bit? But I think overall, defensively, if we can get that same effort, but Kevin, you know this, and I think every fan does. This really is Jayden, and we got to get Jayden and Terry on the field. If we can get both, and they can't be one or the other, we got to get both. You saw last night the difference that Terry McLaurin made. Even though, again, that's his first action in probably a month or some change. Those 2 catches, we don't have anybody in the roster that can make those catches like Terry does. So we need Jayden, we need Terry, and like you said, our room for error right now is extremely, extremely small. But if you look at the rest of the NFC, as far as maybe from 5 to 7, maybe 5 to 7, it's not like teams are running away. So there's still some time, but it's getting early. It's getting late early. So we gotta figure out from a health perspective. We got to get Jayden on the field, and we got to get Terry on the field. So again, it's no moral victories, but I all this bashing of Joe Witt, which again it was warranted. Last night, and man, you got to tip your hat because you're going into Kansas City and it's 7-7 at halftime, and the offense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. You got to give him some credit for what he did last night.
I'm glad you're saying that. Anthony kind of felt the same way. I thought I was going to get a lot of pushback today to saying that I didn't hate last night. I actually came out of it somewhat encouraged, and that's different for me because when you lose, and when you lose by 3 touchdowns, nothing's even close to right. And I didn't come out of that game, Reggie, thinking, oh my God, they're about to turn it around on defense. I don't feel that way at all. All right, I do feel, however.
You know the old saying, right? The game was closer than the score. That's last night. Even though they won it,
certainly the first half, there was you take 3 plays. You can do this in a lot of games, I understand. But the flukish deflection for the pick from off at Debo, and the 2 4th downs. Look, you got to convert the 4th downs. They were great at converting 4th downs last year, in part because they had a cheat code at quarterback and they didn't have him on the field last night. But they could have, should have, would have, but really, with the way they moved the football, they should have had more than 7 points, and that could have made a difference in the competitiveness of the game into the fourth quarter.
final question for you. Was that pass a little bit too hard from Mariota to Debo? Because normally you don't see it bounce that hard. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
You don't think
Mariota
so?
doesn't really throw. Mariota really throws almost everything with touch, don't you think?
Okay.
You know? Anyway, thanks, Reggie. Appreciate it. Let's go to our guy, Joe in Springfield. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, Joe.
So I know we were talking about the Debo drop, return interception was a killer because that could have led to points, whether a field goal or a touchdown. But I have to say, the key play for me, which is I didn't like, was beginning of the second half when Chiefs first possession. We have the Chiefs on a third down, and they do get an incompletion. But when Quan Martin does a helmet-to-helmet hit, which gives the Chiefs the first down, extends that drive, that to me was the turning point because then they went for it on fourth down and scored. But then Jalen Lane, for some reason, bobbles that kickoff, and the ball's at the – I mean, that was frustrating. To me, those two were the turning points. So I'm going to leave those that didn't like that. But I will say one good thing about last night is that have the teams realized that they got to stop kicking off to our guy Luke McCaffrey because look what he's done every time there's a kickoff. So my side note, let's face it, we were facing an AFC team last night that was on another level than we were, and we're facing a Hall of Fame quarterback. Even though we did pick him off twice, we did not get points out of that, which was frustrating. These two back-to-back NFC games coming up at home are huge before we go to Madrid. Now, I understand that it's still the season's not over yet, although it feels like it's starting to get away. Those games in December, I mean, with Philly's schedule and Dallas' schedule before they play us again with those 4 division games. But, Kevin, we got to handle our business in these 2 NFC teams. We got to get more.
Right now, the only thing that matters for those of us that still think that there's a chance they could get back into this thing is Jaden Daniels playing Sunday against Seattle.
Absolutely.
And playing healthy.
If he doesn't play, then I don't know what's going to happen.
If he's out, I mean, we can basically start talking about next April and the draft or free agency if he's out for, another couple of games. Because, and I love Mariota. I do. This is the same conversation that I have about Terry. I love Terry. Terry's a really good player. He's not an elite receiver. He's a really good player. Marcus Mariota is a really good backup and would be a really good, a low end, bottom third starter in the NFL in an offense like this. And you're professional with him out there and he gives you a chance. But if you don't have the elite level traits that Jaden Daniels brings to the table with the surrounding and supporting cast, you got no shot to win 3 of the next 4 or to win 7 of the final 9 to get to 10. You don't have a shot. With him, you have a chance. That's the only thing that matters right now. I'm hoping that they kept him out of this game, that if it had been a playoff game, he could have gone, but they're looking at it. It's an AFC opponent, tough spot to begin with. And by the way, short week before the next game against a well-rested Seattle team. Hopefully he's back on Sunday. He's healthy, and he can trot out there with both Terry and Debo on the field because it does matter to have both of them. One of them is better than none of them, but both of them and Kinlaw and Tunsil, they need their best players to have chances to win, 3 of the next 4. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. I got to get to a break. Bobby, Chris, Jody, Lou, Dre, Tony, Cam, stay on hold. We'll keep taking your calls. Ben's going to join us from Kansas City. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, the team980.com. All of our NFL talk every day is presented here on the Team 980 by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today.
All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. A less than happy night for the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football. It was a tale of 2 halves as Washington was able to come away with 2 interceptions in the first half and go into the halftime break tied 7-7. Then Patrick Mahomes remembered who he was and marched down the field for 3 second-half touchdowns. Final score, Chiefs 28, Commanders 7. To the World Series we go as we got a 2-for-1 special last night. 18 innings of postseason baseball. back-and-forth game last night between the Dodgers and Blue Jays that went into the final frame of action, tied at 5 runs apiece. Then 9 more innings of baseball were played until World Series hero Freddie Freeman cranked a deep shot to center field, put it away for the Dodgers just before 3 a.m. Eastern time. Now tonight, the Caps, they get going against the Dallas Stars. No Rasmus Sandin. He heads to the IR with an upper body injury, nor will we see Dylan Strom as he is day-to-day with an upper body injury that he suffered against the Ottawa Senators, neither of which the aforementioned players travel with the team. They have brought up Ethan Frank from Hershey. We'll expect to see Connor McMichael and Ryan Leonard on the top line with Alex Ovechkin. Puck drops at 8:30. Pre-game coverage begins right at 8:15 on our sister station 106.7 The Fan. And tonight, right here on the Team 980, the Washington Wizards, they take on the Philadelphia 76ers from Capital One Arena. Coverage gets going at 6:45 p.m. this evening. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, your calls, and then Ben will jump on with us next hour, reacting to last night's 28-7 loss in Kansas City. For those of you just joining in, my overall takeaway was there was some encouraging things from last night, especially the way they came out and played. Nobody that watches football could watch the way that team came out and played and say that they weren't ready for that test, that they were flat. That they weren't, motivated. They're just limited, and they made too many mistakes. One of the things about last week's game and this week's game that we talked about heading into the game, it was like, you can't have any drop passes. They had 2 or 3. Can't have any penalties. They actually didn't have one penalty in the first half. You can't turn the ball over. Opening drive, they're on the move. They turn the ball over. There's just right now, especially with the team they've put on the field the last 2 weeks against the opponents that they've played, there is just very little margin for error. And they've had too many of those errors that have kept them from, competing in these games. Again, though, to me, last night was totally different than Dallas. And the way I felt watching them, like I thought they had a legit chance at halftime. I really did. I mean, they gave up 249 yards on 29 plays defensively on 3 drives and 3 touchdowns, and they lost 28-7. But I did not necessarily, feel that way. Well, I didn't feel that way when Jaden left the game last week. But look, if they come out and they are a try-hard team that just has a ton of limitations, and clearly this season has been impacted by the injury situation. It happens every year in the NFL. There are teams whose seasons get, partially or completely derailed because they don't have enough players and enough good players because those players get injured. And Washington's having one of those seasons, but they do have the opportunity to get their best player back, to combine with their second best offensive player back on the field, maybe their third and fourth best offensive players in Debo and Tunsil. Those players have to be on the field for this next stretch of games. The next stretch of 4 games against Seattle, Detroit, Miami, and Madrid, and then Denver after the bye week. This is the pivotal moment in the season. You've got to go win 3 of 4, period. Am I predicting it? No, I'm not. Do I think there's a chance? Of course there is, if Jaden Daniels is on the field and healthy. Jody, down on the Eastern Shore. What's up, Jody? Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm with you. On encouraged. I am. I had a question for you. Max answered it, and I'll touch on it in a minute. But we lost the game because of the offensive side just wasn't close to being good enough. Not against them. Not even close. Having said that, the first half on defense was the best half of defense since Dan Quinn and Joe Witt has been in Washington. It's not even close. I don't care what half you want to put number 2. It's not close to that one. The energy, the energy reminded me of last year. The play reminded me of a Dan Quinn Seattle team. That's what it looked like. And I was very encouraged in that. Now, here's the question I was going to ask.
Me too. And I don't disagree with you. I think it is clearly the best half of defensive football this year. I'd have to go back and think about last year. We know that there weren't a lot of good halves of defensive football last year. But there's no doubt that it was the best half of defensive football of the season, because you got to take the Giant game and the Raider game out of the equation. Those teams were inept. They were impotent offensively. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. Was it Quinn Seattle? Not exactly. But the second half did happen, Jody. It did happen.
Well, that's what I'm getting ready to touch on. Now I'm getting ready to get down to reality. And here's where my problem is. And Max touched on it. Why they switched from man to zone, I have no idea. Listen, was Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes make adjustments? Of course they are. But if you beat me, if what it's been doing was working, you beat me. But don't give them the criteria to beat you. You switched up and they beat you. I mean, I do not understand that for the life of me. Why they
Well,
did
they
that.
played zone in
They
the first
had to
half.
switch to
I don't know what you're talking about. They played some zone in the first half.
not as much as man.
Well,
So, I mean,
I'd have to look at the
believe so.
breakdown, but they were definitely in some zone in the first half. I mean,
Oh,
you
I'm
know,
not
the
saying they
play,
didn't play
one of
any
the plays
zone.
that I looked at over and over again because it was one of those odd alignments was the big hit by Reeves on Mahomes on the 3rd and 10. They ended up going for the 4th and 1. I think that was midway through the first quarter. They literally had one defensive lineman in a 3-point stance, and it was Deron Payne. Everybody else was in a 2-point stance. They feigned blitz, and they were in zone all over the field. Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Well, they played more man. I'll put it that way. I'm not saying they didn't play any
I'd have to go back. I haven't seen the breakdown.
Well, and
they're not a good man team, Jody. You would agree with that. And that's a tough man matchup against their speed and Rice.
They haven't been a good team anyway. Zone, man, it doesn't matter.
That's true.
They've been
That's
horrible.
true.
But last night, that first half, they were a good defense. They were a good defense, not an average defense. They were a good defense. And they got away from that a little bit, and I don't understand. But they have got – and listen, they played Patrick Mahomes. They played Andy Reid. They were going to score some points. I mean, that's just – that was going – and like I told you, I'm not blaming the loss on the defense. I'm not. I blame the loss because we didn't score enough points. You can't score 7 points against them and expect to win. You can't score 7 points against anybody and win. But I'm encouraged with the energy. Now, they have got to have that same energy, and you're right. They can have energy all they want at 5 men on the field. It's just going to be energy. Mean, but 5's got to be on the field. But let's just hope
has to be.
They can get it together.
I mean, I'm looking at the big play to Worthy in the first half. That's zone coverage. So I don't know where the breakdown is. I'd have to look at it, but they weren't in exclusive man coverage in the first half. The big plays actually happened.
But I thought they played majority, is what I'm saying, and it was working. And like I said, Marshawn got an interception. I couldn't believe it. And then 2 interceptions, we got 0 points out of it. That's why we lost. Because we got 0 points off 2 turnovers. That's why.
No doubt. And the unfortunate part of that is they really moved the ball and moved the ball effectively. They just came down to 3 plays, the interception and the 2 4th down misses. Yeah. Somehow, if you just get one of those, take back one of those, you've got at least 10, if not 14 at halftime. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jody. As always, appreciate it. Let's go to Lou. Lou, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks to you and Max taking my call, man.
Sure, Lou.
2 observations, and they don't correlate directly with last night, but they just kind of piggyback off of last night. I'm just wondering, why is it that why does it seem like with last season and this season, we both seasons we start off as a hot team running the football, and then halfway through the season it seems like teams figure it out and then we can't run the ball anymore. It started the same way last season. I mean, I'm just wondering if anybody is noticing that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would say is that, last night the Chiefs are not an easy team to run the football against. They gave up a lot of yards per carry, especially against Baltimore in that game with Jackson in the first half. I talked about that yesterday, but they were not successful running the football, although I liked at least the commitment to balance in the first half and to Mariota being a part of the run game. But I'd have to think about, the games last year. I think they had some good games where they ran the football. Hell, they ran the football well in the playoff win at Detroit, right? Didn't Brian Robinson Jr. have one of his better games in the playoff game at Detroit last year? So there were games late in the season in which they ran the football well. In that playoff win against Detroit, they rushed for 182 yards in the game. I mean, against Atlanta, Jaden had like 80-something in rushing yards. Now, some of that scramble, understood. But thanks, Lou. Appreciate it. Let's go to Dre in Baltimore. Dre, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I want to start by saying it was proud to see that they had a sense of urgency, and you saw a fight in them that we hadn't seen all year coming out. I felt like the speed and the attitude helped with the young pups being on the field, looking like hound dogs. They were making some mistakes, but, you know, it's game experience. So I think it'll help in the long run if we just keep them out there a little more. I feel like the defense won us the game in the first half. And aside from the 2 turnovers, didn't we have 2 turnover on downs and a punt in the first half?
No punts in the first half. 2 fourth down misses and the interception. They had the ball 4 times in the first half. They drove it on all 4. 1 ended up in a touchdown, 2 ended up in fourth down misses, and 1 ended up in the interception on the first drive. That was it. They ran 32 offensive plays, put up nearly 200 yards, but they couldn't finish 3 of the 4 drives in Kansas City territory.
Yeah, it was just those missed opportunities, which leads me, honestly, I mean, just back to the offense to me. I just feel like Cliff gets in these frenzies when his plan isn't working, and he just becomes predictable. I mean, like, the lateral ball game is fine when you do it in a rhythm, but when you're doing it as a all means on a third down play, we know that you're going to throw Debo that bubble. That lineman or linebacker was hounding that play from jump, and even if he didn't bobble the catch, that player would have broke that play up easily.
Yeah, but remember, and they've done this, and Cliff does this with Jaden and Marcus. They use, especially in a lot of early down situations or in third and very long, they use some of those, those smokes and those bubbles as really an extension of the run game, right? It's a way to get Debo, who's one of your best runners, the ball at the line of scrimmage to get 4 or 5 yards, rather than giving it to Krosky Merritt, and being a little bit diverse there. That's a run extension play for all intents and purposes. I don't have a problem with that. The problem with that is he turned to run before he had the ball in his hands, and they got very unlucky with the deflection. 9 times out of 10 that doesn't get picked, but it did in that spot, and that sucked for that drive, because let's face it, they were on the move. They were in the midst of a 10-play drive, deep into Kansas City territory. They're in the red zone, on the opening drive of the game, threatening to take an early lead. By the way, eating some clock. That was unfortunate. Tony and Frederick. Tony, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for taking my call. How's it going
Sure,
today,
Tony.
buddy?
I'm well, man.
I'm going to admit I didn't even watch the game because I was so pissed off about second half of Sunday night football refereeing. I watched the baseball game. But I just want to try to be a voice of reason here. Man, we're in the second year of a 4-year rebuild. I mean, at some points in time, I think that maybe the worst thing to happen was for them to be so good last year, because not only did the fans buy into it, but the ownership bought into it. And with the draft picks that Adam Peters has already traded away, it's going to be hard to really improve this team next year. But, man, just stay patient, stay the course. Y'all are going to be a good team. You got the right people in there. I believe in you. Just remember, you're only halfway through a rebuilding plan, guys. Have a great day.
All right, thanks. I've heard this a bunch of times over the last couple of weeks. Like, man, last year really set them back. Do you want to give back last year? I mean, come on. I mean, the NFL doesn't really do rebuilds anymore. There are teams that go super young, super heavy into, the draft. And by the way, it's centered on a rookie quarterback contract. But did you not want them to go for it last year? Did you not want them to think a little bit bigger and a little bit sooner based on the results? There's not really a rebuild kind of scenario in the NFL. Every year is an opportunity. And by the way, they don't have a lot of picks, but they got a lot of cap space because they've managed the contract situation smartly. A lot of these, older players are on one-year deals. They're not on multi-year deals. So they'll have opportunities, and they've built a culture here where, people aren't repulsed at the prospect of playing here. They actually embrace it. They like Washington now as a potential landing spot. I don't see how it set them back. You had, and if it did somehow get them off course, they were in recalibration mode. They never said rebuild, recalibration. And then, yes, they kind of recalibrated the recalibration. Okay, I'll concede that with the trading of 8 picks for 3 players. Now, those 3 players, Lattimore certainly at this point looks like a deal you'd like to go back and not do. Tunsil already looks like a deal you absolutely are glad that you did. And Debo was low risk, high reward. And he's given you really, in a couple of, you've got 3 wins. Debo was the star in 2 of them. So, his availability, always an issue. He was back on the field last night. He made a critical error in the game last night. And we can't get that from one of our best players on offense moving forward. But the idea that, they set themselves back because they won 14 games and were 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl, I guess there's some critical thought, some intellectual thought that you can make sense out of that, but I'm not giving it back. Stay on hold. Back after this.
with that initial reaction to the play on offense, what are some of your initial thoughts to what you saw?
Yeah, I thought not capitalizing early on the takeaways. I think we might have had correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 3 trips, into their territory, not to come out with points. That's the story of the game to me, where we've got to take advantage of our ops when we get them there. That's where I felt like leaving that spot without points into that spot. And some of the fourth downs, that was by choice, knowing like this is not going to be a game that you're going to win with field goals. You need touchdowns. And so we were going to be bold. We were going to live on the edge. And I thought that was the right call going into it. You don't like the result, but I like the aggressive nature of going after it.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. They played, a solid half of football. They were a team that was prepared. They were hungry. They were fast. They were urgent. They were competitive. And they just couldn't make it pay off on the scoreboard in the first half. And that really did tell the tale, Dan Quinn, after the game. If you're on hold and you want to stay there, we're going to jump on with Ben real quickly because he's got a flight to catch back from Kansas City. But I am going to come back to your calls if you hang around. If you want to All right, sorry about that. We had some sort of an explosion near my studio. I told Ben about it last hour. It sounded like an explosion, and then we had a major power surge from that. But we are back up. Ben Standig is with us from Kansas City. If you're on hold, we'll try to get back to your calls, but we got to get Ben before he gets onto a flight to head home. All right, let's just start where we always start after a game. Your big takeaways.
Yeah, well, I everybody loves when you get asked, what's one word that describes X? What's the thing that you would describe this some situation? And the word that kept jumping into my mind last night was inevitable. And I don't mean because you knew or you figured they were going to lose to the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes was going to do Mahomes things. That's true, but it wasn't that. It was that going into this week when the talk was about, simplifying the defense and getting to the basics and, how are they going to, be a more presentable defense and all these things, it just felt to me like a team that understood they were shorthanded and things weren't working and they had to dial it back to a degree to try to get on the right track. And they did a lot of good things in the first half, right? The offense was disciplined, controlled the clock. The defense held the Chiefs to 7 points, all these things, but it just all felt inevitable that it was going to not be nearly enough, especially once they missed the scoring opportunities in the first half. This team right now is just too shorthanded. I'm not even blaming the injuries per se, although that's obviously a huge part of it, but it's the lack of depth we've talked about overall, the lack of playmakers, I would probably say, on defense. Obviously not having Jaden Daniels last night was a huge component as well. But it just feels right now that when you're going up against these better teams, they just don't have enough. And that's why, to me, this just felt inevitable. And Kansas City obviously lived up to that in the second half.
Is there anything that they can take from last night that carries over in a positive way into this very difficult but very important upcoming stretch?
I mean, they seem to believe that they had a really good week of practice and that a lot of the things that, they were doing, they felt there was good communication defensively in the game. I guess if those basics helps, the changing of the play calling to simplify it a bit, that seemed to help as well. Dan Quinn and some of the players talked about guys flying around faster than they had in the past. So if those are things that are real that you can carry forward, then then that's helpful. But I don't know what more else to say. I mean, here's the rub, right? Yes, we talk about Jaden Daniels and some of the recent draft picks, but overall, this is the oldest team in the league. There is only so much upside you're going to get from that. What you need when you have the oldest team in the league is one that is solid and steady all the time and doesn't make mistakes, and it gives you a pretty good baseline of performance. That's not happening here. So the idea that it's going to suddenly turn around, that doesn't necessarily make logical sense based on the general personnel that they had. I did like that they went to some younger guys yesterday, including like Tyler Owens and Jordan McGee on defense, just to give them more speed and athleticism. But I mean, that to me is probably the basics. If they just think, hey, we did a lot of the fundamental stuff pretty good, but we just fell short with the bigger plays and cashing in on the opportunities. Okay, but that's kind of about it as far as I can see.
All right. Well, I think there's zero chance of them resurrecting their season without Jaden Daniels. Adam Schefter intimated that this might be, more than just a one-game miss with the hamstring. What are you hearing?
Oh, did he say that last night or today? Or?
Yeah, he said that last night.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't heard much beyond, obviously, look, when they ruled him out at the start of the week, that suggested to me that they were saying there was no chance he would play this week, which infers that next week has to at least be in somewhat question, right? Because, you would think, I mean, it's a short week to boot, but, if there was any chance that he would go. So, that doesn't, I guess, shock me if that's the case, but hopefully, there's better news in the coming days here. But yeah, it's a quick turnaround. I mean, they're obviously back in DC already. First practice of the week is tomorrow, and they're going to have to get not just Jaden but other guys healthy as well. So yeah, if look, I think in the bigger picture sense, we all still understand that Jaden's health is honestly more important at this point than this season turning around. So you can't risk whatever might be going on with his hamstring and have that become not just a lingering issue now, but maybe even something that becomes a bigger issue. So. If they have to remain cautious with him, so be it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Mariota is a completely fine backup quarterback, and when he, has had to play, he's been fine. And at times better than that this year. But the reality is, he's only going to get you so far. That's why he's the backup right now and not starting for some other team around the league. So, if they don't have Jaden, obviously it's going to be much more complicated. And the next two teams in Seattle and Detroit are two of the better teams in the conference right now.
At Ben Standig on X on Twitter. Ben's got a Substack column. He also has a podcast called Last Man Standing. What about the other injuries? It was a big difference to have Debo and Terry on the field at the same time. Will they both be on the field at the same time next week? Terry sat out the fourth quarter with what looked like a re-injured quad. I guess you don't know for sure, but did you get a sense as to whether or not this is going to be serious this week?
Well, I mean, he sounded positive when we spoke post game, but like you said, he didn't go back in the game. I could see after he left the field that he was on the sideline talking to the trainers for a bit, and ultimately didn't go back in. And there were a couple of turning points in the game. I think one was that 3rd and 11 play where Mariota gets sacked, where it looked like maybe there was some confusion on the right side, but Terry wasn't even in the game at that point. That was soon after his injury. And it was like, at that point, it was like, the combination of him being out and, not making that play there was sort of where this game started to flip for real. So yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, look, this is, this was the whole thing. Again, we can sit here and say that it's completely 100% coincidental that the guy who is not around for all of training camp is suddenly coming up with these soft tissue injuries that he avoided his whole career, basically. And that is reasonable. Science people can say that, all true. And yet it does feel like there's something like, of course, this is what's happening here, that the football gods, we're going to look for ways to penalize this team after being so great with them last year. And Terry, feels like, patient zero on some level with some of this stuff. So hopefully he's out there. He obviously showed the difference he makes, not just not just his mere presence on the field. And that opened up opportunities for John Bates and Ben Sinnott and Jeremy McNichols, and all that was key. But then he obviously made the Terry McLaurin plays. Nobody makes contested or impossible catches more than he does. Two of his big catches I thought for sure were no good based on replay, in terms of out of it. And then of course he somehow gets it in. So he was, he did what he needed to do, except for the fact that unfortunately it looks like this injury may be still lingering for him.
What about Tunsil and Kinlaw and anybody else?
Yeah, Kinlaw said he's fine. He was wearing he had his right shoulder in a sling after the game. Dan Quinn said he could have gone back in, but they decided, with where the game was, just to let him rest. Tunsil, not sure about. Obviously, he went out early, came back, went out again, and then didn't return. We may never find out, and maybe it's nothing. And I've mentioned this now a couple of times. Maybe I'm doing this. I shouldn't be. I don't know. But it was odd on some level that of all the weeks, Brandon Coleman, who was the starting left tackle most of last year, is active. Tunsil goes out right away, and I don't know. It's sort of an odd circumstance.
Well, who sat? It was Trent Scott that ended up being inactive and Coleman being up. So Scott would have been the backup left tackle, correct?
Correct. I'm just saying, if you said, hey, Tunsil's not playing, who do you want at left tackle? I would think you would go Coleman over Scott. So
so it worked out for them.
Yeah, it worked out for them. I don't know if it's coincidental or they had a sense earlier in the day that Tunsil might have done something. I don't know, but whatever it was, that was, look, again, it's so funny about this season, right? If you go back to the beginning, what were their big moves this offseason, right? Trading for Tunsil, trading for Deebo Samuel, signing Javon Kinlaw, drafting Josh Connerly and Trey Amos, right? Those are kind of the bigger moves. for the most part, all that's worked out. I mean, Connor is the only one where it's been up and down, but okay, first round offensive tackles, you accept that there's going to be some of that. Everything else has largely worked out, and yet everybody wants to say, oh boy, they had what is Adam Peters doing? What is Dan Quinn doing? It's just, it worked out, but only to a point. The injuries are just, killing them right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's like you just nailed it. Like it's hard to talk that sense into those that have flipped on Adam Peters because of the average age of the roster and the fact that there's no depth, and going back to a lot of these and already, declaring, certain draft picks completely done with. And like you said, the big acquisitions, Tunsil, Debo, Amos in the second round, and Connerly Jr. for the Kinlaw, which universally was panned in terms of the money. He's been as good as anybody's been on defense this year, and they'd be even worse without him. They're not very good with him. Did you have an issue with either of the fourth down go for it situations?
I don't think so. I mean, Dan Quinn's explanation post-game to me made a lot of sense. They were not going to win going for field goals when Mahomes was going to get touchdowns. And I think also the reality is whether Dan Quinn, thinks this overtly or subconsciously, when the offense was as constituted without Jane Daniels is in the crosses midfield in Kansas City territory, you kind of have to go for it, because who knows? It's not like you can sit there and say, oh, we need to get a touchdown this next drive, and that there's a realistic chance that that's going to happen just because you want it to, the way it's like you could last year when you have a Daniels or Mahomes can do for the Chiefs. So I didn't really have an issue for it. Obviously, look, if Debo Samuel doesn't have the ball ricochet off his helmet and bounce right into a defender for an interception, they at least get 3 points, you think, on that drive. And, Zach Ertz comes up, an inch short on the 4th and 6.
5 inches, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's good enough, but I didn't, all things considered, I didn't really have a problem. Again, it's too bad that at least on the Debo one that they didn't at least get 3 points, but they did turn Kansas City over quickly on the other end.
Yeah, I actually still, and I've looked at it a number of times, I think Ertz actually got there, but whatever. We've got virtual measurement. The virtual measurement, just so you people know, that is not, that is an accurate measurement based on where the referee spotted the ball. It doesn't mean that the referee spotted the ball correctly. That's got to come from, replay assist, and they didn't give a replay assist. So technically, Quinn could have challenged the spot on that 4th down, unless they said replay assist looked at it and said it was the right spot and it's not going to change. The 4th and 1, 0 coverage blitz, and we don't know what he was looking at, Mariota, and what Terry was doing, but Ertz appeared to be the guy that he had to throw hot to. Ben Standig is joining us. And we've gotten basically all of the injury updates. We'll know more, when Quinn talks today, or we might have to wait until tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, I said that this was a more encouraging feel in watching this game than last week, or even the end of the Bears game. But they've got to have their best players on the field, starting Sunday. And if they don't, then we're in for, probably a checkout date of, late November, early December, and we're used to that over the years. It just isn't nearly as much fun.
Yeah. And look, I'm with you that there was more encouragement in a certain level. Like, last week you kept asking me, what does Dan Quinn mean when he says that we're going to play better on defense? I think you saw some of that in this game, but it also felt like the Chiefs were, big brothering the Commanders. Like, once they decided, okay, enough's enough, they, rattled off the 21 straight points and put it to bed without ever really feeling like Washington
no doubt
was going to compete. So that's the part that's tough. And look, I think that's where they're at right now. They have to play a fundamentally sound game, avoid mistakes, and let the other team hopefully give them opportunities the way Kansas City did with turnovers on their first 2 possessions. The problem is that, they just didn't capitalize and then ended up having their own mistakes. So that's just a tough place to be right now. Obviously, with Jaden, if he's able to come back, that increases the margin of error because now you have a guy that can make plays. But like you said, maybe he doesn't even come back this week, and they're in the same boat. I thought this 4-game stretch starting here with Kansas City and then including Seattle, Detroit, and then the Madrid game, they have to go 2-2. If they don't go 2-2, they're 4-7 with 6 to go. You pretty much would have to run the table just to get to 10 wins, and even that might not be enough because they're way behind right now in terms of the NFC conference tiebreakers. Who knows if the Eagles will be at 10 or they may just have more wins. So if they don't go at least 2-2, so meaning winning 2 of these next 3, they have the margin of error is pretty much gone. So they've got to find a way to win at least one of these 2 home games, thinking that Miami and Madrid should be a win if they show up and do the right things.
Yeah, I've got them needing 3 of the next 4 to get to 6-6 going into December. And then we can, have games that mean something. And these next 4 mean something, but it feels like Sunday is almost must with Detroit on deck the following week. All right, thanks. Have a good flight back. Oh, real quickly, what was it like? It was your first game at Arrowhead. What was the crowd like? What was the scene like?
Yeah, no, I liked it. It was, it's a very old school stadium. I mean, old school is relative, but it was built like a couple of years before the current Northwest Stadium. But just no bells and whistles relative to modern facilities. They did do a big remodel a few years ago. Add some nice areas. So I liked it. The crowd clearly is into it. They love their Chiefs. We walked down to the lower level at one point before the game, and it was a great view. So I definitely can see why people enjoy going to games there, on top of the fact that they have the best player in the league. So yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't see Taylor Swift, so there's that. But
I'm sorry about that. What is the openly mocking of Native Americans via the tomahawk chop look like live at Arrowhead?
I mean, it definitely is a lot. It's one of those things like, look, I understood why people were, upset about the Redskins name and all that stuff. I just never understood why the Chiefs and the Florida State could get away with this. I mean, even in the peak of Redskins time, like that, none of that ever happened. Like there was never any
never.
If you consider that to be some type of mockery or I always thought that was, I guess, worse on some level if we're going to complain about any of it.
No. It's they focused on the thing that was incredibly debatable and ignored the thing that wasn't debatable. That was always the frustration. Like, of course, that is openly mocking Indians, Native Americans in mass, 70, 80, 85,000 at a time. And somehow the Bob Costases and the Peter Kings of the world never had anything to say about that. Never understood that. Still don't to this day. Catch your flight. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, man. See ya.
If you're on hold, stay there. We do have an open line if you want to jump on 301-230-0980. We'll get back to your calls. Your reaction after last night's 28-7 loss in Kansas City. So we found out what the explosion sound was outside my studio because it sounded like multiple explosions, and we actually lost power briefly. The Blue Angels did a flyover. They did a multiple flyover of DC, and they were flying low. It's all over the internet. And I guess, Max explained that they've done flyovers before that have shattered windows. And it clearly it disrupted the power. I didn't think that was possible, but it sounded like two massive explosions. It was so loud. But the Blue Angels are cool. I wish I'd known. I would have let Max take a couple of calls and gone outside and watched them because they flew right over my building in which my studio exists. All right, back to your calls. 28-7 was the final score. Look, I'll recap very quickly my thoughts on this. I didn't feel watching the game and then after the game like there was a lot of reason to be totally discouraged. I felt better about this one than I did last week or even the Chicago game for that matter. I thought it was the best defensive half of the season in the first half. I thought offensively they moved the ball at will against a good defense. But of course, you can't come away with 7 points when you've moved into Kansas City territory on 4 consecutive drives, 5 of the first 6. And you missed on 2 fourth downs. You had an unfortunate ricochet off of a veteran wide receiver who took his eyes off the ball to look downfield. It ends up in an interception. I feel like they have to take that effort, and bring it to Seattle. Our friend Ian, who I know drives most of you and even me nuts on occasion, but he did DM me something that I have to agree with and I am concerned about. When you play and you spend as much as they did energy-wise last night, and then you got a short week against a team off a bye, you can be emotionally flat in your next game. Now, hopefully, you get a quarterback back who didn't play last night and is not going to be emotionally spent. And that's the most important thing about the Seattle game. But they did a lot of good things last night. And yeah, Ben said they big brothered Washington in the second half. It's true. 3 drives, 249 yards, 3 touchdowns on 29 plays. But, they needed some things to go their way. They needed a fumble that was on the ground to be recovered by Rashee Rice instead of Marshawn Lattimore, who had a chance to fall on it instead of try to pick it up. They had to score on a 4th and goal. Washington was tough in the red zone until the 4th and goal, and Mahomes did a Mahomes-like thing. I think it was much more last night about facing, arguably the greatest ever, especially the greatest off schedule ever, than it was our team, which it was mostly about against Dallas and Chicago. That's my take. I've not lost hope. I think as long as Jaden comes back and he's got Terry and Debo on the field and Tunsil on the field, they can't be playing these games without their best players week in and week out. That's a season that gets derailed by injuries. We're not talking about all second-tier players. Dorrance Armstrong, done. Will Harris, done. Dietrich Wise, done. Jaden Daniels has missed multiple games. Terry McLaurin, multiple games. Debo Samuel has missed a game. They have to have, if they're going to get back into this, their best players on the field to have any chance. And, of course, the most important player would be Jaden Daniels. All right, let's go to Paulie. Paulie, thanks. Go ahead.
Hey, man, hell to the W, man. Listen, man. I just hearing a bunch of excuses for a loss. I mean, I'm not going to give them credit. It was good to see them play with some energy.
Don't say that.
Give them credit for something.
Don't say that. If it's good, if you're not giving them any credit, don't say it's good to see him play with energy, because that's credit.
I can't say that because I can't say that because you're supposed to play like that every game.
And they do for the most part.
Every game.
And they do for the most part.
No, they don't. This team has been flat on a lot of games. They're
Nah, that's not
flying
true.
around.
I
And
disagree
that
with
is
you.
True, Sheehan. But Sheehan, you've been up here pussyfooting with the truth is about this team. They're not a good team. They're undisciplined. They're not well coached. I don't care if they moved up and down the field in the first half. Second half, they made no adjustments. Andy Reid made adjustments. Spagnuolo made adjustments. We came out there with the same crap that we do every week. We played soft. This is a soft team. Period. It's soft on offense.
Why do you keep picking us every week if you are convinced that we're poorly coached and that we're not a good team at all? You consistently, week in and week out, pick us.
Right, because I do. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I know it needs to happen to change, and they don't do it.
All right.
What I was supposed to pick the other team? It ain't like I'm putting money on it. If I'm putting money on it, it'd be different. But
maybe you should.
I'm not gonna pick against my team. When I know
I bet against my team many times. Yeah.
Hey, usually you got a little change behind it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, but me, I'm scared to even put money on my team. I don't want to jinx it. So that's what I do. That's just me. But my whole point is, man, things need to change and they ain't changing. Same stuff. Why is Wagner still on the field? You see the difference between him and McGee?
Well, McGee was on the field the whole game too. They put McGee on the field for pretty much the whole game. Let me look at the
on the field, giving up gaps, can't get to the run. I mean, like I said, Joe Witt made no adjustments in the second half. You seen in the second half, they said, okay, we're gonna run these bubble screens to these wide receivers for our running game. Let's get them running sideline to sideline, and then we're gonna hit them up the middle. And that's what they did. We made no adjustments to it.
Well, it's funny because one caller called in and said all they did was adjust and they adjusted the wrong way, which isn't true either. So there's a lot more exploration. Stop. I heard you. Relax.
Yeah, I'm mad.
There is a lot more exploration into the idea that they didn't make any adjustments. And the idea that they didn't do anything different coming into this game is 100% wrong. They played completely different in their alignments. They played players like Owens and McGee. McGee played, I'm looking at the snap count right now. He played 84%. Can you just let me finish? Can you let me finish? McGee played 84% of the snaps. Luvu played 88. And Wagner was on the field. They had 3 linebackers on the field for 84% of the snaps. That's different. They played Holmes. They played Owens. They played, they did try some different things. They did, but they're limited. And they played the greatest quarterback of our life, of the most recent generation of football, who absolutely went vintage in the second half.
He went vintage because we did the same thing we always did: sit back and play scared. You got to get pressure on this dude, and we ain't do that.
Well, they got pressure in the first half.
You got to get the pressure the whole game.
Well, you know what?
Can't be satisfied with that.
So they did something different in the second half than they did in the first half. You said they didn't change at all. So I don't know where to go with you. I think last night was a much better overall effort, and they just played a much better team.
Man, that's loser talk, man.
Well, whatever. Keep picking us to win. Keep saying every week, this is the week, instead of looking at it realistically. It's a limited team.
Coming up with excuses and talking loser talk, man. Hey, you know what, Sheehan? I heard you sit up here on this radio until I was every year. Tell me about your high school basketball team, which was limited, but y'all played y'all style and made it all the way to where you made it to, right?
Right.
It don't matter if you limited. Doesn't matter if you limited.
You're right. Coaching matters. Coaching matters.
It matters how you play.
Yep.
Sheehan, I love you.
Coaching matters. I love you too. I love you too. Bobby in North Carolina, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. You had a caller earlier last hour, and I kind of agree that just by the eye test, the defense looked different in the second half, Kevin. And I noticed, I love you to ask Suter this.
Well, Paulie just said they didn't do anything. They didn't make any adjustments.
Well,
so which is it?
Well, to me, this is Bobby telling you. It looked like they played a whole lot more zone in the second half, Kevin.
They played some zone in the first half too on some key plays that they gave up yardage on.
They played zone in the first half. I'm not saying, but they also played a lot of man and a lot of press in the first half. We didn't do that in the second half, Kevin. They gashed us in the second half. We had a bunch of blown coverages, Kevin, in the zone in the second half. And all
the
that
second
being
half
said,
was not good defensively. It was
okay,
not good,
but
obviously.
just ask Footer how much zone we played in the second half compared to the first half. He's breaking. That would be interesting for everybody to
those
know.
numbers are out there. Next
Okay.
Gen will have those numbers, so I'll look for them and have them for you tomorrow. But I know they played some zone in the first half. I know that because some of the key plays they were in zone.
They did. I agree with you, but they played a whole lot more zone to me just by watching it on the TV last night.
They also got run on in the second half. That hurt.
I mean, we got work. We got work in the second half. That little bubble screen that had extensive run game, they worked us pretty good, and we didn't make any adjustments.
Well, they're better.
That being said, they are, and they got more talent. You're exactly right. We're limited. You're exactly right. But they played excellent in the first half. I mean, kudos to this coaching staff. They had them ready to go from the first snap. They were flying around. Intensity was great. Reeves and Martin were freaking flying around. I mean, they played excellent. Reeves was like unbelievable the whole first half.
Yeah, I thought so
and,
too.
You know, my whipping boy the whole year, Lattimore, he actually played very well last night, Kevin. Give kudos to him. He manned up, played a good game. I actually think he graded out like in the high 80s, what I read earlier today. And that being said, Kev, you know.
Who did?
Lattimore. I think
I think Max said that he and Terry were the highest rated players per PFF for
correct.
whatever that's worth. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too. But you know, Kevin, it's a shame because the first three drives we had chances to score and get on top of them, you know, and it might have made a difference in the whole game. That was my only thing about the game, you know, really. We had chances early. We drove down first three drives and didn't get any points, and that was kind of a backbreaker. But you know, the main thing is we got to get 5 back. Season's not over. I'm in your camp. You get him back, and Terry can come back, and some of these other guys that got nicked last night, they play. Kevin, we can win 3 out of our next 4. We can get back to 6 and 7. Got a bunch of home games left too, Kevin. Bunch of home games. This was a tough stretch. 4 out of 5 on the road.
No doubt.
Okay.
No doubt.
But anyway.
It's a shame they didn't get the Chicago game. It's a shame that we had the botched handoff at the end because it would feel, you know, obviously different at 4-4. There'd still be panic. I'm not suggesting that there wouldn't be, but that Chicago game, if they are able to put something together here, get Jaden back playing at a high level and healthy, you know, that may be the game that we look back on and say, damn. Because they had no shot against Green Bay. They really didn't have much of a shot against Atlanta, even though they played okay. But Atlanta just torched our defense. And Dallas and Kansas City were not going to be winnable games. That Chicago game is going to come back to haunt them, I think. But it may be that the season ends up going 7-10, 8-9, and it doesn't matter anyway. Thanks, Bobby. Let's go to Chris in Delaware. Chris, thanks. Go ahead.
Kev, thanks for taking the call. Quick sidebar. I try to get down to about 1 or 2 games a year, and I've had the pleasure. In 2013, the one game I chose that year was the Kansas City blowout game.
The one in the snow
in December. Yeah. Brutal. Brought a buddy of mine down. An Eagles.
You were like
friend.
the only person in the crowd after the first
he
quarter.
Was rooting against Andy. Yeah, and it was a mess. So, you know, I said that the Dallas game was a code red, and I still believe that is the case. I just wonder, you know, you always say that Mahomes kind of plays with his food, and then it's like, we only need like really 20 minutes to win the game, and that's basically what they needed. So they outclassed us, and they are a better team. They're a championship team, and they have been for quite some time. But at what point, you know, if we go into Seattle, if Seattle comes to us and we lose, and they put up 30, and if Detroit comes in and they put up 30 plus, at what point in the season, you know, you can debate when it's over and when it's not over, but at what point do we start looking at Joe Witt for the totality of last year and this year?
I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to be, you know, top 3 topics when the season ends if it continues this way. There's a body of work here now that's a year and a half old that says that, you know, 85% of the time, basically the defense stinks. And it might be personnel, and maybe, Adam Peters and company deserve the majority of the blame, but I don't think that's the way Quinn will see it. But I just don't think he's ready to do something in season. And I think the problem with doing something in season, Chris, is that there have been other issues, right? It hasn't been just the defense. They turned the ball over 3 times against Chicago. That's why they lost. They dropped 4 passes, had 11 penalties, and turned the ball over twice against the Cowboys, which contributed to the loss. Last night, they get an interception. They get 2 fourth-down stops. That contributed to the loss. They only put up 7 points. So, yeah, there is a body of work here now that suggests that whether it's him or the players, the bottom line is he's in charge and the defense stinks. And it has since he took it over. And Quinn's a head coach and a defensive head coach, so he's going to know.
Right. And if it's any other line of business, I mean, Witt's already fired, right, from a bottom line perspective, just based on performance, because it does stop the ball.
Yeah, I mean, there's nuance to everything. Not every manager comes in and just reads the bottom line and fires him. I mean, there are circumstances.
Yeah,
and he's lost his 3 top defensive ends this year. And he lost the safety that they were counting on this year. So there's a lot of that, too. Chris, I got a break. Thanks for the call, as always. But if you're on hold, I'll try to get another call or 2 in here before we go to Chris when we come back. Did you know that over the weekend, favorites went 12-2? The best win percentage for favorites in a single week since December of 1985. And all 11 favorites, all 12, covered by 7+ points. Most in a single week in the last 30 years. Crazy. Usually that means death for me. I went 500, so I'll take it on a week like that. Let's go to Cam. Cam's been on hold the longest. Cam, I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking my call, Kevin. So I have 3 takes, and I think you'll really like the last one. But the first one is, tired of people saying, how come we ain't blitzing more? How come we ain't blitzing more? When we consistently shown we can't really cover true wide receiver 1s and 2s in a man-to-man situation. Like, I think people just aren't watching the tape. I'd say my second point is I'm also frustrated that we haven't been played complimentary football. Like, the defense looked amazing in the first half, and we couldn't get more than 7 points. So that's frustrating. And then finally, Kevin, I think you'll appreciate this. I think last night finally put to bed all the people who were saying Mariota is running this offense better than Jaden Wood.
Well, I don't think that was a lot of people, but it was definitely some. And Marcus didn't play poorly last night. You know,
No,
he played well
didn't at
against
all.
the
But I think-
Raiders. He played, okay, not great against the Falcons. And last night, I gave him a B plus. They just couldn't finish, and the unfortunate play more than any of them was the Debo interception on the opening drive. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you watched last year and you actually believe that there's like a better chance or an equal chance with Mariota, I think you need your head examined. But I think he's a perfect backup for this franchise and for this system. And I want him to be the backup moving forward. He's only 31 going on 32. If he's happy here, he could be the backup here with Jaden for the next several years. Anyway, thanks. All of you I didn't get to, my apologies. Since it was a Monday night game, we'll do some calls tomorrow as well. But Chris Russell takes his swing at last night next.